The manhunt in Nashville, Tennessee for a man they say may be armed and dangerous after a shooting at a Waffle House restaurant killed 4 people before a customer wrestled the weapon away from the gunman. Now, when shots rang out, police say the shooter was only wearing a green jacket. And when he finally left the restaurant, he fled the scene, dropped the jacket, and left nude and on foot.
Police are out in force searching for the gunman who killed 4 people.
After Reinking left the Waffle House walking south on Murfreesboro Road, he went to his apartment, put on a pair of pants, and then went to a wood line behind the apartment. There is a chance that Reinking at this moment is at large with 2 other weapons.
The suspect then fled, but as authorities hunted for Reinking, they discovered he was already known to police.
In April of 2018, a 29-year-old man named Travis Reinking opened fire with a semi-automatic rifle at a Waffle House restaurant in Nashville, Tennessee. Several people were struck by gunfire. 4 of them succumbed to their injuries. Reinking was arrested and charged for the killings after a 34-hour manhunt, and in January of 2022, he stood trial. The proceedings featured eyewitness testimony upon which the following narrative is based, along with publicly available reporting as of this date regarding what led up to and what followed the slaughter of 4 people in Nashville in the spring of 2018.
Travis Reinking is severely mentally ill. He's schizophrenic. Mr. Reinking was driven by delusions, paranoid thinking, auditory hallucinations. One of those delusions you're going to hear about began with a Taylor Swift concert, where he believed that Taylor Swift was talking directly to him. And then he went on to believe he was in a relationship with Taylor Swift. And you're going to hear expert testimony to talk about a 3 to 5 year period leading up to that night.
Travis Reinking is from Morton, Illinois, a small town of about 16,000 people in the central part of the state. Morton is about 150 miles southwest of Chicago. In the year 2015, international pop star Taylor Swift came to town to do a show. Travis was present at the concert. During Swift's performance, Travis apparently believed that she had mouthed the word hello to him. Since then, he believed that he had been communicating with the young singer and that she had been sending him coded messages and reading his thoughts. In May of 2016, police and other emergency services personnel responded to a CVS drugstore parking lot after Travis's parents had called for help. A paramedic on the scene told the responding officer that Reinking was delusional and believed that Taylor Swift was stalking and harassing him and hacking into his phone, the officer wrote in an incident report. Following the incident, Travis was taken to a hospital for evaluation. In August of 2016, Travis moved to a small town in Colorado called Sharita. He got a job at a construction company working as a crane operator. His bosses and co-workers began to notice that the young man was prone to bizarre behavior, which included an obsession with Taylor Swift, whom he claimed he would marry. Alternately, he would also complain that Swift was stalking and harassing him and hacking his bank accounts. On March 18th of 2017, he called 911.
911 emergency?
Yeah, I need to report something.
Okay, what do you need to report?
I have somebody stalking me around town, and I do not appreciate it. I want it to stop. And no one seems to take me seriously when I say that.
Okay, and who is it that's stalking you?
Taylor Swift.
Okay, and what is your name?
Travis Reinking. Everywhere I go, I'm pretty sure like the police here are involved in it.
Okay, I'll have an officer come meet you at your house then.
A police officer responded to Travis's home and spoke with him for 20 minutes or so, then the matter was closed. Travis's erratic behavior continued. At some point, he showed his co-workers his guns. Eventually, he quit the job and said he was moving back to Illinois to live with his family. His former boss in Colorado called his father and expressed concern about Travis's mental health. By April, Travis was back in Illinois and living in his apartment above his father's business. On June 16th, an employee at the family business called the Tazewell County Sheriff's Office to report that Reinking came down from his apartment wearing a pink dress and holding a rifle. The employee told police that Reinking yelled, "Is this what you fucking want?" before he threw his rifle in his trunk and left, according to authorities. Soon after, police responded to a report of a disturbance at a public pool. The pool director told a responding officer that a man in his 20s barged into the pool wearing a pink woman's house coat. The man dove into the pool and took off the coat and swam around in his underwear. When he got out of the pool, he shouted at lifeguards that he was a man and exposed his genitals to them. Travis didn't draw his gun at the pool. Presumably, it remained in the trunk of his car. Police searched the young man for weapons but found none. No one at the pool pressed charges. In a report about the incident, police said, quote, "Travis has some mental problems," unquote. The following month, on July 7th, Reinking was arrested in Washington, D.C. by Secret Service agents for being in a restricted area near the White House. He wanted to set up a meeting with the president, said a Secret Service representative. When officers informed Reinking that he was trespassing, he told them that they would have to arrest him as he proceeded to walk right past the security barrier. Travis was taken into custody and was charged with unlawful entry and was later ordered to do 32 hours of community service back in Morton as a part of a deferred prosecution agreement. The matter wasn't closed with that, however. As a result of the White House incident, the FBI and Secret Service coordinated with local law enforcement in Tazewell County to investigate Reinking, and subsequently, on August 24th, the Sheriff's Office seized several guns that Travis owned. They also confiscated various ammunitions and Travis's state firearm owner's ID. As Reinking was under federal investigation and before his guns were seized, a Tazewell County deputy had a strange encounter with him. The deputy described the interaction in a report dated August 11th, about a month after the White House incident. According to the report, Reinking drove up to a deputy squad car and asked about filing a report. Reinking told the deputy that people were tapping into his computer and phone and barking like dogs outside his home. He said he felt like he was being watched and that people were baiting him into breaking the law. He told the officer that it all began when he started riding Taylor Swift. The deputy said in the report, quote, "Travis said he was tired of people messing with him." The officer advised Mr. Reinking to call the police if he heard people barking like dogs again. "No further action is being taken," the officer wrote. Sometime in 2017, Travis recorded this YouTube video where he complains to the camera that someone had been in his home.
That's the thing, is these people just magically show up, you know, and it's an art of deception, you know. They're doing this for some reason, because it hasn't been the first time. So, for some reason, my cousin Chris just happens to show up here while I'm outside. You know, the off chance that I'm outside just when he decides to pull up. But then, when I started talking to him about, you know, what had been going on about this internet stuff, you know, and how my parents like had me taken to a mental institution for looking for Taylor Swift. Because a long time ago, I had read some stuff on the internet, and it made me think that she was uptown. So I was like, I'll just go look uptown and see if she's up there, you know. And I asked my mom to go with me because I was like, I don't want to be bored just like playing this game, you know. So I'll have someone go with me and they can help me, you know, find this person. You know, and so I asked my mom to go. And next thing I know, we're out front of CVS, and the police are pulling up. This guy comes out from ERS, the police pull up, you know, and I'm being arrested and everything. This is where I live, this is where I reside. No one can come in here. The door is locked. There's nothing saying anyone can come in here. And so, anyway, I come in here, I come into my bathroom, and I notice in my bathroom that the toilet seat is up. The toilet seat is up on my toilet.
He appears to be having a paranoid episode and rambles about various delusions. Subsequent to the seizure of Travis's weapons in August, the sheriff's office handed the guns over to Travis's father, Jeffrey Reinking, and instructed him to keep them secure and away from his son. Text messages showed that Travis reached out to his father on November 12th and informed him that he would be moving. Quote, "Dad, I got a place out of town now, so I'm gonna need to get my firearms back from you somehow," Travis wrote. Jeffrey Reinking consented in a text response about an hour and a half later. The elder Reinking said that he didn't know why his son was moving or where he was moving to. He retrieved the guns from a safe on the family property and gave them to Travis. That autumn, Travis moved to the Nashville, Tennessee area. According to Reinking's defense attorney, Luke Evans, this move and his previous relocation to Colorado were in an effort to get away from the harassment he imagined he was suffering at the hands of Taylor Swift and others.
When he couldn't get relief in his hometown of Illinois, he moved. He moved because he thought if he moved, it would make it stop. What he talked about is the psychological rape, it would stop. So he moves. He moves several times. His family tries to get him some help. It doesn't take. He moves again. He ends up in Nashville.
Also, when he attempted to meet with the president earlier that year, his apparent intention was to seek protection against this perceived persecution. In January of 2018, he began working for a construction company in Nashville called Clark Crane. He would work there for only a little over 2 months, however, as he was fired in April when his co-workers and managers became uneased at his erratic behavior. The guy was paranoid, the company's president, Clark Elliott, said. He continued, quote, "He said people were after him, whatever that meant. When it got to the point that he said people in our company were after him, I asked that he be fired." While he was employed with the company, Travis had another encounter with law enforcement. It was February when a police officer responded to a report of a disturbance at a motel in the city of Alcoa, Tennessee, just several miles south of Knoxville.
I hear to my car, and this man down here was running up and down up the top and then down here screaming at everyone's door, telling them he'll make as much noise as he wants. And I looked at him, I said, I have kids and they're getting ready for bed. And he was right there at that white truck, literally ran into our hotel and tried to hit me. Acted like he was going to put his hands on me.
Where's he at now?
He's down there with the man that owns this place.
Down towards
They're
the
walking
office,
toward the office.
Reinking denied that he had barged into the woman's room or that he had accosted her. The motel gave him a refund and he left the establishment. No charges were filed. Shortly after his dismissal from Clark Crane, Reinking got a job at another construction company, but only worked there for one day, April 16th. On April 17th, police say he stole a BMW from a dealership in a suburb of Nashville. The car was equipped with the GPS device, and police retrieved the vehicle near Reinking's apartment complex soon after, but did not know the identity of the thief at the time. At approximately 3:19 a.m. on the morning of Sunday, April 22nd, Mr. Reinking drove his pickup truck into the parking lot of a Waffle House in the Antioch neighborhood of Nashville on the Murfreesboro Pike. He parked his vehicle and sat behind the wheel for approximately 4 minutes. There were patrons milling about inside, picking up late-night meals. A few individuals stood outside the establishment. Reinking was nude, save for a green jacket. He brought with him his Bushmaster XM15. The pockets of his jacket contained fully loaded extra magazines. When Reinking exited the vehicle, he brought out his semi-automatic rifle. He approached the people standing outside and unleashed a burst of bullets.
Travis Reinking arrives at 3:19. 3:19 and 30 seconds, he pulls into that back entrance and drives into the parking lot.
No sooner do we start joking and laughing about that, you kind of hear a noise. I didn't really pay attention, and I kind of turn over my left hand shoulder, and you can see this figure kind of falling. Now that I know that's Joe Perez, and then the windows are shot out. It looks like a silver glitter is going through the air. I'm also listening to the gun, and it's not a handgun. It's more rapid fires. It's not pow, pow, pow. It's
all of a sudden, and I do mean sudden, there was a loud pop over my left shoulder. There was I felt something on my face. I didn't know at the time it was debris, it was glass. I made the decision to just fall to my side, and then I continued to hear what I know now was gunshots ring out. And I heard the cook behind the counter say to take cover, someone was shooting.
The first one was an extremely loud pop to the point to where it really hurt my left ear. And then hearing became very distant in my left ear.
Did you know whether it was a gunshot at the time?
The first sound I heard, no, I didn't. But the second one I knew because that's when glass started to shatter.
But shortly after James and Brennan entered the Waffle House, we started hearing the loud popping sounds. I think a lot of people in the restaurant thought they were fireworks, which was kind of odd for that time of year. But I recognized that they were gunshots, and they were pretty rapid.
Sharita Henderson, Shantia Waggoner, James Shaw Jr., and Kayla Shaw, who is no relation to James, were all witnesses to the events that occurred at the Waffle House that morning and testified during Reinking's trial. Kayla Shaw got out of her car and walked into the Waffle House just as Travis Reinking pulled his truck into the parking lot. She went in to pick up carry-out orders for her two friends who waited in the car. Shantia Waggoner was sitting behind Kayla near the door of the establishment, in front of the window, with her boyfriend, Akilah DaSilva. They had two companions with them, Akilah's brother, DeEbony DaSilva, and a young female. They were just ordering as Kayla sat waiting for her friend's food. Sitting in a booth to Kayla's right, just several feet away, were a pair of sorority sisters, DeEbony Groves and Sharita Henderson, who had entered the Waffle House and sat down less than 5 minutes before Kayla did. Here, Sharita recalls preparing for a late-night meal with her close friend.
We stopped at the first Waffle House that is further up the road, and we looked inside and it was too full. There weren't any seats available. So we said, why don't we just go to the one that's closer to my condo? Because we were really hungry and we had been at events all day. So we decided to go to the Waffle House where the incident occurred. So we went inside and we stopped at the first booth, and I remember DeEbony saying she needed to use the restroom. So I just waited for her outside, and then we both came back into that first booth and sat down. We started singing Jesus Loves Me. We're both preacher's kids. God is always around us, and we're always singing and joking and laughing about church, and so we're singing to each other pretty much.
At just about this moment, James Shaw Jr. and his close friend, Brennan B.J. McMurray, pulled into the parking lot in separate vehicles. As they walked in, they noticed Travis Reinking sitting in his truck near the entrance to the restaurant.
Brennan said to me, "Look at this crazy motherfucker, gonna shoot up the place."
James Shaw remembered one of the cooks at the establishment announcing to his co-workers that he was going outside to smoke a cigarette.
We heard Taurean, Sanderlin. He said he was gonna go on this 15-minute smoke break. He'd be right back.
Taurean Sanderlin stood outside just several feet away from where Travis Reinking sat in his vehicle. At the same time, behind Travis's truck sat a car that belonged to a man named Joe Perez. He had pulled into the parking lot shortly before to inspect the faulty tire. Joe began walking from the parking lot toward the restaurant. He walks past Reinking's truck. As Joe nears the Waffle House entrance, Travis Reinking steps out of the vehicle and brings out his rifle. He raises the weapon and begins to fire.
And Joe Perez Jr., he fires at him multiple times. He strikes him 4 times. And you will see Travis Reinking fire another round at his body on the ground. The 4th strike is a devastating head injury that shatters his skull. He takes the rifle, and Taurean Sanderlin, who actually has begun to run towards Travis Reinking, he aims and begins shooting directly at him. Taurean quickly changes course and runs down the sidewalk away from him, running for his life. He is struck 7 times. He is struck in the head with a devastating gunshot wound to the head. Travis Reinking fired 15 rounds in 19 seconds outside. You will see at 3:23 and 52 seconds. You will see one of the bullets strikes the window in the front of the Waffle House. Kayla Shaw, the girl in the pink shirt who's standing there at the counter, you will see the glass shatter and come straight at her face. That is the moment where everyone runs for cover.
Shantia Waggoner and her boyfriend, Akilah DaSilva, scurried in this direction and attempted to take cover. Seconds later, Travis Reinking entered, as patrons and employees tried to hide themselves. He saw Shantia and Akilah and fired several rounds at them, striking them both. Sharita, Henderson, and her friend DeEbony Groves had slid beneath their table and attempted to hide themselves. But when Travis Reinking walked in their direction, he looked down and saw them. He and Sharita made eye contact just before he pointed the rifle at them and fired.
I didn't see Joe at first, but as I looked out the window once the glass shattered, he had turned to me. I could tell obviously that he had been hit at least once. I didn't know how many times at the time, but he turned to me and mouthed, "Play dead." And so that's what I did. And then I saw him be shot in the head. Right after Joe Perez was shot and then Taurean was shot, I remember Taurean like running, but I didn't see him at first. It was like a flash. And then Travis Reinking entered the Waffle House, and I wanted to be as still as possible and pretend like I was dead. But as soon as he came in the door, he looked me in my eyes and he shot me immediately. He shot me 3 times.
Sharita is struck 3 times, and her friend DeEbony is struck twice.
James Shaw and his friend BJ had dashed into the bathroom area along with several other patrons at the sound of the initial gunshots.
And we all went through the swivel door. I just stopped behind the door and looked through the eyelid glass window, and then he turned the gun towards me and he let off a round.
After he has shot Sharita, shot DeEbony, he immediately fires into that area, and you'll see the bullet hole in the glass in that door. And you will hear from James Shaw Jr. He will tell you that he is on the other side of that door, and that he hears the whistle of a bullet that goes by him. He's actually struck in his arm. But then he hears a pause, and he's looking out that small window. He hears that pause, he looks, and he sees that Travis Reinking has pointed the rifle down. James Shaw Jr. in that moment, he makes a decision.
Did you ever hear any gunshots come through the door into your space?
Yes.
Describe that.
It was more of a whistle. And come to find out, it struck me later in my arm. It just was a graze.
Did you see Mr. Reinking point the gun down before you rushed the door?
Absolutely.
And what did you think he was doing?
Reloading. Put another magazine in.
Once you rushed the door, what happened?
When I first run through the door, knocks him off balance. Gets up. I then grab the gun with my right hand, the barrel, and I point the barrel down because I know pulling up, and I finally get the gun and I throw it.
To go along with his graze wound, he received second-degree burns to his hand from grabbing the hot barrel of the gun. Kayla Shaw had dropped between the bar and the stools when the windows were shot out. She laid still and played dead as the gunfire continued, just feet away from her.
All right, so you did not fall into the area where people walk. You were between the stools and the solid partition that was what the counter sits on.
Correct.
But then under the counter as well.
Right.
All right. All right. When you heard those other shots, what did you do?
I made the decision to lie still and breathless. I decided to play dead because I figured that was my only chances. Where am I gonna go? I have nowhere to hide. I'm exposed. I played dead.
Her eyes were closed, and she heard but could not see the struggle that commenced when James Shaw burst out of the bathroom area and confronted Mr. Reinking. After James Shaw disarmed the naked gunman and threw the rifle to the other side of the bar, he forced Reinking out of the restaurant. At which time Reinking removed his jacket and fled the scene, now completely nude. The massacre had lasted a total of 42 seconds.
I don't remember the moment that I was shot. I just remember I went to look at Akilah and he was not crawling or moving anymore. So I tried to move forward to get to him to figure out why he wasn't crawling anymore. And when I looked down, I noticed that I was shot and the gunshot had ripped my leg away. And I couldn't get to him because my leg was heavy. It was still attached in the back.
I got up and I ran around the counter to where the workers work. And as I was running around the counter, I unfortunately slipped in Mr. DaSilva's blood. Right where I fell is where Shantia was sitting. And I was face to face with her dismembered leg. Honestly, in a moment of shock, I ran to my faith. I prayed over Shantia's leg, and I tried to save myself, and I got out of there.
I was just thinking to myself, at least if no one's gonna come for me, at least I can say something, to my parents before if anything happens to me, if I pass away. And I called my mom, and she was a little bit confused at first, and I was telling her I was shot, and she kept saying, "Oh, you're taking shots," and I was like, "No, I'm not taking shots." And I remember her just making me laugh, and I was really happy because at least, if something were to happen, the last thing I remember was my mom making me laugh.
Reinking shot several people that morning, 4 of them fatally. 29-year-old Taurean C. Sanderlin, Joe R. Perez, who was 20 years old, 21-year-old DeEbony Groves, and Akilah DaSilva, who was 23. Several agencies, including the Metro Nashville Police Department, the FBI, ATF, and the Tennessee State Police, commenced a manhunt that morning that would last for 34 hours. Roughly 160 law enforcement officials participated in the search. Authorities quickly identified Travis Reinking as a suspect as he had left his vehicle behind at the crime scene following the carnage. Inside the truck were documents that showed Reinking's name and address. In Mr. Reinking's sparsely decorated apartment, less than a mile from the Waffle House, police found multiple guns, various ammunitions, and a safe containing assorted documents, including Travis's passport, diploma, and birth certificate. Also contained in the safe were the key fob for the stolen BMW and several letters that Travis had written by hand. The letters were addressed to Taylor Swift. There was also a 5-page letter to entertainment mogul Oprah Winfrey. On the following day, April 23rd, a woman called 911 and said,
"Standing in the construction site apartments on Mountain Springs Road, in between the school, there's a man that just walked through my job. Dark pants, dark shirt, wearing a backpack. From a distance, it looks like this guy. He's got mud all over him. He's a white male. Okay. Looks to be about maybe 5'10", 6 foot. If I'd get somebody over here, this is right where he lived. It's that suspect y'all are looking for."
Reinking was located in a wooded area less than 2 miles from the crime scene. He was wearing a backpack that contained assorted items, including a Bible, bottles of water, a loaded handgun, and ammunition. He surrendered peacefully to authorities. He was charged with 4 counts of criminal homicide, 4 counts of attempted homicide, and 1 count of having a firearm while committing a dangerous felony. He pleaded not guilty. In August, after forensic psychologists evaluated Reinking, a judge found him incompetent. Subsequently, he was treated at Middle Tennessee Mental Health Institute in Nashville, and in October, he was declared competent. In March of 2019, Travis Reinking's father was charged with unlawful delivery of a firearm for having returned several guns to his son just months before the deadly shooting, after the weapons had been seized by the Tazewell County Sheriff's Office. Illinois state law forbids people from selling or giving guns to anyone who has been a patient in a mental institution within the past 5 years. The XM-15 with which Travis had opened fire was one of the confiscated weapons Jeff Reinking had returned to his son. Additionally, several lawsuits have been filed against Jeff Reinking by the families of Travis's victims. At least 2 suits have been settled as of April of 2022. Opening arguments in Reinking's trial began on January 31st of 2022, nearly 4 years after the Waffle House massacre. The defense argued that he was not responsible for the killings due to his mental illness. During the trial, the jury heard testimony from dozens of individuals, including the eyewitnesses referenced previously. In aid of its insanity defense, Reinking's lawyers called to the stand the 2 forensic psychologists who had evaluated Mr. Reinking in 2018. One told the jury that she had determined that Travis was schizophrenic after examining years of medical reports, police documents, and reports of interviews with family, co-workers, and people he had encountered. She said Mr. Reinking suffered from a severe form of the disease and from intense delusions, hallucinations, and paranoia. She said that on the morning of the shooting, Travis was so terrified and that he was so convinced that his actions were being directed by orders from God, he, quote, did not appreciate that what he was doing was wrong, unquote. She and the other psychologists described interviews they'd conducted with Reinking in which he shared with them his psychotic fantasies. During the testimony of the lead investigator in the case, Detective Desmond Summerall, the defense had him read aloud the handwritten letters that had been found in Travis's safe.
Taylor, I'm really confused right now. I don't know if it was you in the pictures on Instagram or someone who looks like you. Do you really have a twin sister? Which one am I in love with then? I want the Taylor that wrote those beautiful songs and sang to me at her concert.
In the 5-page letter to Oprah, he pours his heart out to the billionaire talk show host.
Oprah, I'm writing you because I'm in love with Taylor Swift and I don't know if I'm delusional or not. I started writing Taylor June 2nd, 2015. The letters were about dreams that I was having. I saw Taylor for the first time September 29th, 2015. It was at a concert and she mouthed the words hello to me while she was singing a song.
The prosecution countered that Travis Reinking's actions on April 22nd of 2018 were calculated, deliberate, and premeditated. On February 4th, after 5 hours of deliberation, a jury convicted Travis Reinking of 16 charges, including 4 counts of first-degree premeditated murder. On the following day, he was sentenced to incarceration for life without the possibility of parole. Thank you guys once again for tuning in. Special appreciation goes to my new subscribers. I appreciate you guys to the fullest. And as always, thanks to all of you for watching, liking, commenting, and all that good stuff. You guys keep this channel growing. I'm putting the next video together as we speak, so stay tuned for that. And until then, peace.